Welcome back. Peace talks between Russia and Ukraine yesterday ending without a ceasefire. Though both sides did agree to more prisoner exchanges, Russia reportedly telling Ukraine it would only end the war if Kyiv gives up huge pieces of territory, withdraws fully from 4 Russian-occupied territories, rules out any membership to NATO, and accepts limits on the size of its army. Ukraine repeatedly rejecting Russia's conditions, saying it is equal to surrendering. All of this happening after Ukraine's weekend drone strike on Russia, targeting 5 air bases and destroying more than 40 warplanes, occurred. Joining me now is Fox News' senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, great to have you this morning. As always, this sounds just impossible to end with those requirements that Russia is putting on Ukraine. What is your assessment?
Yeah, well, maybe Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's senior security official and obviously a very close ally of Vladimir Putin, said it best. He said the Istanbul talks, which just took place yesterday, is not about a compromise for peace. What it's really about is ensuring a swift victory for Russia. And I think that's really where Russia is coming from here. They are stalling in terms of unwillingness to make any concessions because they still see a victory in the front window here. They see an opportunity, and they're continuing to move in that direction. So where are we, and what should the United States do? Listen, we all knew that this was going to be hard. President Trump certainly knew that going into this. Nothing going to be easy. Even if both sides want to end the war, and one side here clearly does not, because they still think they can achieve victory, it would still be hard. But I think what we've got to look at is what has worked. President Trump leveraged Ukraine because they wanted to have security guarantees, and that was somewhat understandable from Zelensky's perspective, prior to going to a ceasefire. And the president leveraged him by pulling intelligence and also stopping military assistance. And Zelensky removed those conditions. And that was part of the peace process exhibited by the United States to leverage someone to change their behavior. We've got to do the same thing with Russia. It is part of the process. It's not outside the process. And that means we got to leverage him. And we don't know if that will actually work. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
But we do know what is not working. And just the diplomatic talking is not working. So the leverage has got to be, I think, number one, military assistance, and give them the robust air defense systems and the other things they desperately need. Why is that? Because once Putin sees that the United States is still committed to Ukraine, he knows he can't achieve victory. The evidence is already right in front of us. We're 39 months into the war, Maria. 39 long months. That's how much time it took for us to defeat Nazi Germany. And Putin has not succeeded. He hasn't even taken the entire Donbass region, which is what he wanted to take in 2014. So he cannot succeed if the United States is providing military assistance. He knows that for a fact. Second thing, let's issue the crippling sanctions. That is all part of the process. Let's leverage Putin just as we did Zelensky. We don't know, let's be frank, if it's going to work. But it certainly is worth a try at this point, because diplomatic talks are not getting us there.
I was just going to say that, you know, Lindsey Graham is talking about advancing this legislation for severe Russia sanctions. I mean, look, if the free world allows Russia to just, you know, set the terms here and say, you know, all of these requirements that I just listed that it said is necessary to end, what's to stop Xi Jinping from doing the same thing in Taiwan and wherever else he wants? Who's to stop North Korea from doing the same thing? Iran, you know, so the free world has to take a stand here in order to isolate Russia. Isn't that right? And you're right. I mean, Lindsey Graham took a trip to Kyiv over the weekend. He went with Richard Blumenthal. They co-sponsored the Senate sanctions measure, putting a 500% tariffs on any country that buys Moscow energy products. Wouldn't that send the right message to Vladimir Putin?
It will if you couple it with increased military aid. Putin pays more attention to what's happening on that battlefield because this is what's really happening here. He wants to achieve total military victory and collapse that regime and run that country himself through a stooge. But you also need the pressure of the sanctions. The thing you have to understand about Putin when it comes to sanctions, he's always been dismissive of them because he thinks he can work around them. I am not diminishing the importance of the sanctions. I think they're critical. But even more important is the military assistance. And you're absolutely right. We've got to draw a line here. And we've got to take a stand. There's no doubt about that. President Xi, if we cut and run, which is what Putin is after, he wants to wear down the president. President throws up his hands and says, I'm done here.
Yeah.
And cut and run. That's a victory for Putin. That's a victory for Xi. That also strengthens the Ayatollah's spine here in standing up to the United States. You're 100% correct about that. And what else happens as a result of that? Our allies are going to feel threatened as a result of it because our adversaries will be emboldened.
Yeah, I
yes,
mean,
now is the time to leverage it as part of the peace process. We're still in that peace process, and we've got to use the leverage the United States has.
And I wonder if that leverage includes, getting tough with Xi Jinping. I mean, we all know that China is behind Russia, and they're so supportive. The president is going to speak with Xi Jinping this week. I'd like to know if this comes up so that President Trump can pressure Xi Jinping to pressure Vladimir Putin. I mean, that's, the China relationship has empowered Putin. And by the way, it's also supporting Iran. I mean, President Trump reiterated that he's got a red line on Iran, saying that he will not allow enrichment of uranium nor a nuclear bomb under any new deal. The president posted on Truth Social, the auto pen should have stopped Tehran a long time ago. Enriching under our potential agreement, we will not allow any enrichment of uranium. And the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, also told Fox, President Trump has made it clear that Iran can never obtain a nuclear bomb. Special Envoy Witkoff has sent a detailed and acceptable proposal to the Iranian regime, and it's in their best interest to accept it, she said. But, General, what about that? I mean, is there some wiggle room that President Trump has to push China to get on the right side here and stop supporting these adversaries across the world? Would that help?
Well, certainly it would help significantly. China is the #1 supporter of Russia. They're financing the war by buying their oil at a discount. They provide so much to assist them in war materials. They don't provide a platform like a tank or a fighting vehicle, an artillery piece, but they provide all the components to help make that, to include the chemicals that are necessary and the rare minerals. And then all the other things. To sustain a military on a battlefield, you need much more than weapons and ammunition. And they're providing significant assistance to them. So, yes, that's why these sanctions are very important, because there's secondary sanctions involved. When it comes to Iran, here's where I think we are. The Ayatollah has let his president, who obviously is a little bit more moderate than he is, to try to get involved in negotiations, to stall an eventual attack as much as possible so they can recover their air defense systems that the Israelis destroyed, primarily the S-300s. They are doing that as we speak. I think where the Ayatollah is, he's not going to let the United States dismantle his nuclear enterprise. In other words, the capability to make enriched uranium themselves, the centrifuges at these secret sites. We would have to be on those sites and watch that destruction ourselves. He's not going to let that happen. What is he willing to let happen? I think he's willing to let the strike happen because he thinks some part of that will survive and he will still be able to pursue a nuclear weapon even though there will be sanctions on him. That is where he is. And we've got to kind of understand what's really at stake with the Ayatollah. He is playing a very hardball game. He's not giving up on the idea of having a nuclear weapon. Why is he so obsessed about it?
Right.
It's pretty obvious. Once he has a nuclear weapon, he believes he has regime preservation, that no one's going to conduct a conventional attack on him to take his regime down if he has a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, but
that's what's behind all of this.
Who knows what he's going to do with that?
And he'll use it as a leverage against the Israelis.
Exactly. That's what I was just suggesting. General, it's great to see you. Thank you, sir. So a privilege to get your insight. Thank you, sir. General Jack Keane.
Yeah, great talking to you, Maria.